Jacob, let's start with this. The boldest election interference ever attempted, in my opinion. The indictment of Donald Trump, 34 charges, I believe, 130 some years. I don't even know. Alvin Bragg drags him into court in New York, and it just creates a huge fiasco. Some people say it's a distraction. We'll talk about that in a moment, but nonetheless, it is what we would say. It started to happen already, but it's a big moment where you have a former president being indicted out of the misdemeanor, if you want to call it that. But nonetheless, it is an attempt to try to go after Trump, after his whoever it is that would follow him and vote for him. And we see it starting in New York. There's 3 other cases that can lead to this. It could lead to Georgia. There's the election charges in Georgia. I think there's another one. There's a couple other ones after that. But these are the first one. This is the first one that the shoe dropped. What can we make of it? What do you think? And what can we make of it? And what can we expect? Some people say it's no big deal. It's just more political theater than anything else. But should we be concerned?
Well, we should be concerned, first of all, because of what we and certain others have been saying for some time. Democracy as we know it was something that definitely emerged from the Judeo-Christian influence of the scriptures on British and American democracy, parliamentary democracy in Britain, and presidential democracy in the United States. The founding fathers were not all Christians by any means, but they all adhered to Judeo-Christian principles of justice, government, representation, and rights of man coming from God, not from government or politicians. They all adhere to these things. Now that we've turned against God as societies, the democracy and the freedom it gave us is evaporating. And this is just another example of it. A corrupt, politicized judiciary, a corrupt, politicized Justice Department, a political fascist FBI, a political Gestapo, something that ideally should be abolished and replaced, and removed from the deep state. Be that as it may, it is a politically motivated prosecution by a prosecutor who is pro-crime. He has stated he will not prosecute misdemeanors. So he's legalized crime. Most crime are misdemeanors. He's a prosecutor who has basically legalized crime. This has happened in San Francisco and elsewhere, Los Angeles. But he's a pro-crime prosecutor who has legalized crime. He's not going to prosecute misdemeanors. Then he's reducing approximately 50% of felonies to misdemeanors. So he's taking felonies, calling them misdemeanors, and then says we don't prosecute misdemeanors. He's not only legalized crime, he's pro-crime, violent crime, letting dangerous criminals go. Now, this has taken place other places as well, where you have these Soros-funded prosecutors. It must be deliberate. But although he will not prosecute misdemeanors, he takes what, if true, would be a misdemeanor, on which the statute of limitations has expired, and contorts it with fanciful argumentation into being a felony to go after a former president. While the evidence to indict Hillary Clinton is solid, that woman should be criminally prosecuted. Or the evidence, for Hunter Biden, there's no question Hunter Biden should be criminally prosecuted. Or the perjury before the Congress that, Brennan and Clapper, those men should be indicted. Open cases that nobody would legally question are ignored. You contrive a prosecution against the next president to prevent him from being reelected, or at least trying to do so. Now, again, my preference for the White House at this point would not be Donald Trump. I would not support him again because of the pro-gay gala he did at Mar-a-Lago and certain other reasons. But nonetheless, he should not be prosecuted on something trumped up and contorted. It is a picture of what has happened to the judiciary. It's a picture of what has happened to democracy. And it reflects the fact that we're no longer in a democratic country in Britain or America. These countries are no longer democracies. Plainly, under Daniel Andrews in Australia, that's not democracy. Under Trudeau in Canada, that is not democracy. We cannot think of these countries as being democratic anymore, and that includes the United States. Now, there have been other people in the White House who have been enemies of democracy. Obviously, FDR being one of them, but nothing as overt and scandalous as this. This is what happens in the third world. Bragg is an evil man. There are criminals on the street who can murder people that are on the street because of him. He's an evil man. He's an evil person. He's pro-crime. He is a complete hypocrite, and I hope he's brought to account. He'll certainly be brought to account by the hand of God if he doesn't repent, which is unlikely. But that is what is happening. Politically, it may strengthen Donald Trump's hand. It may actually strengthen his hand. I don't know. But I'm not hopeful about anything anymore. Very, very briefly, nobody was more glad to see the end of Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland than I am. Now she's been replaced by a Muslim. Nobody, a Muslim First Minister of Scotland, and a buffoon at that. Chicago, nobody was more delighted to see the end of the lesbian mayor, Lightfoot, who was also pro-crime. And she was a racist. I was glad to see the end of her. Now she's been replaced by someone who was just as bad. You know, the people in Chicago who voted, it's white liberals. Bernie Sanders went there, and black people who will vote for somebody just because they're black. They vote for their own death, their own destruction. It's going to be black children going to be shot dead on their way to school on the south side of Chicago. This is what the people who voted for her voted for. But they will reap what they sowed. I'm not hopeful about the next election. The last election, that the Republicans should have won the Senate and had a massive majority in the House, failed to materialize. The only place what was expected materialized was in Florida with Governor Santos. The rest were narrow victories and small victories, and they actually lost seats in the Senate. And it was partially Donald Trump's fault. Not totally, but partially the fault of Donald Trump and also Mitch McConnell. I'm not very hopeful for the next presidential election. I will pray, I will vote. I hope God will intervene, but I no longer have any political, any aspirations of any kind of a respite coming through elections being won by people claiming to be conservative and certainly not Republicans. I really don't see a way forward. I'm looking increasingly to Isaiah 9:6. The government will be upon his shoulder. Until Jesus comes back, I have very, very little hope on any government. Even when Donald Trump was here and did many good things. Jared Kushner is a transhumanist. That was not good. He appointed Grenville, a homosexual, the ambassador of Germany, and he is fully accepting of the LGBTQ agenda. Not transgenderism, perhaps, but certainly the full normalization of homosexual marriage and things like this. He did not oppose any of those things, and had a pro-homosexual gala and Mar-a-Lago. I have no faith in Donald Trump whatsoever, but his prosecution is politically staged. It's a travesty. It's unjust. It's unethical. Bragg is a wicked man on whom I pray the judgment of God comes swiftly. Nonetheless, this is the decline of democracy, and we brought it on ourselves by our rejection of this book.
David Lister, some say this is about not just going after Trump, but about anyone that opposes the left-wing party, the agenda, the establishment's agenda. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah. Well, that'll be the last time I discuss my thoughts with Jacob on this, but I agree with everything he said. No, I'm teasing. Yeah, look, this prosecution shows that they're actually afraid that Trump could win again. They want to do everything they can to put a roadblock such as a felony on him so he can't run. But then that would still be kind of unprecedented territory, because he could keep appealing it, and as long as you have the appeal process, which to go to the Supreme Court, you wouldn't really be considered convicted. I think they would say he is, but they really are afraid of him. That shows you something about them. And it's also punishment for messing up their plans 4 years ago. Okay, so but this also shows us that they can come after anybody. Look, when you don't have men that know the difference between right and wrong, that are in law enforcement, such as the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, all these agencies, they're capable of doing anything to anybody at any time. And so that hope that our rights that the Constitution has given us are inalienable rights, such as the right of free speech, is in dangerous jeopardy right now. Our right to assemble peacefully is in danger, because they'll bring activists to destroy you, to kill you. These anti-protesters are openly saying they'll kill us, and more so the verbiage of Christians being the cause for all this. So they're coming for us. And so for us, I do agree that this is a threat to us. It's a threat to our liberty as Americans. But if America falls, the whole world falls behind them.
Yes.
But when people are this demented, they're capable of anything. Those that they're willing to pull the house down, and then the house falls on their own head. It's like that. And what's
Absolutely.
coming is going to be dangerous. So, but we need to be wise. We need to hold tight and stay close to Jesus to give us wisdom for these days that are coming. And so just be wise. Ask for wisdom. He gives it to you freely.